and thank you for tuning in to Blockchain Gamers, a weekly roundup. Today is Friday, the 31st of May. I'm your host, Jenny Jordan. With me is co-host John Jordan. Hi, John. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. Feels like summer is here with sunshine and rain and a lot. That's good. So let's dive straight into this week's news. We have had Mystic Mojo Melee. Unveiling a new game. We knew that was that'd been teased for a while. It was sort of coming, but they obviously released their Go Mojo earlier this year, and now which is like an endless runner, and their auto chess battler Mojo Melee, and now they have the Squad RPG going on the sort of the working title Prophecy of the Ancients, which is likely not to be the sort of final game, I think. But and they've also kicked off a new season. They have integrated a new web shop where you can buy. What is it you can buy in the shop, John?
You can buy the battle pass or the in-game gems for half price this week.
Yeah. Sure. Good.
If you buy them in using the Mojo cryptocurrency, you get them half price. So.
50% discount for a week only if you use the Mojo token. Good. In exciting news, Pudgy Penguins and Mythical Games has unveiled a new mobile party game coming in 2025, which will launch on Mythos chain, which is currently migrating to Polkadot. So Mythical has currently got NFL Rivals, obviously their big mobile Web3 success, and they have currently in development Blanco's Block Party, which was on PC, but that was sunset to be sort of reversioned into a mobile first game. Sounds like, well, by the looks of it, sort of, it's not like a Fall Guys game, Blanco's, but it's sort of that type of game. And this Pudgy Penguins IC party game, as they call it, sounds sort of similar in style, I think. We don't know much details about the game yet, but exciting nonetheless. The Sandbox has launched the Sandbox DAO, which you kind of wonder, why has this not been done sooner? Everyone else has done DAOs and stuff, but there we go, it's good. Good news for land and sand holders to get some voting rights and more power in the community, sort of thing, to be taking part in decisions of the project. We also have Gala, obviously, which is I think you are going to talk mostly about today, John. So I'll hand over to you. Let's go through what's happened and how does this week's news sort of relate to last week's news and last year's news, and so just sort of give us an overview of everything that's happened so far and what happened exactly this week.
Yeah. So actually, it's kind of funny because we covered Gala sort of quite a lot sort of last week, just with all the sort of the minting, unauthorized minting of tokens and all that sort of stuff, which is sort of in a way sort of funny, sort of like comical, I suppose, how inept they sort of were. Although people do get hacked and stuff, so yeah, whatever. But yeah, I guess. So this week there was a statement from Gamedia. Gamedia, I suppose, maybe. So they're a Dutch-based company who developed spider tanks and a couple of other games. But they were they're a company that's been around for a while. Not a high-profile company, just making games. And it just sort of happened the way things turned out that Spider Tanks was, I think, actually the first game to go. Definitely the first third-party game to go live on Gala Games, and they had their own game called Town Star. It was sort of like a copy of sort of Farmville. That was the first game that went live on Gala, browser game. But the Spider Tanks was sort of the first you could sort of say proper game. So it was a PC download, and it was a sort of melee shooter type thing where you built these tanks that were they were sort of fantasy tanks with sort of based sort of around spiders, so they had legs instead of wheels. and you sort of put them together. You had a body and a turret, and you could sort of, they were different NFTs, and you sort of make, the idea was you could sort of make different sort of obviously tanks, and then you just run around fighting people. So it was sort of it's sort of fun sort of concept. I played it a bit back in probably 2022. Had some NFTs, and it wasn't sort of game. It wasn't sort of like a high concept game that you're going to go, this is amazing. It sort of, it was sort of, it did what it said on the tin, but there wasn't a lot else on Gala. There wasn't a lot else really on blockchain. But back then, it was sort of, I would say, one of the first, sort of functional sort of PC games where you could, just everything was sort of there. It wasn't like you can play it for a day and come back sort of in a month's time and play it for a day again, like sort of early access sort of stuff we have at the moment. So it was interesting from that point of view. But they've brought out this statement, which is pretty. I mean, you couldn't really have a more sort of damning statement, I think, of the working practices of Gala Games. And the people like me who've been sort of increasingly sceptical about Gala Games, it's sort of, to a degree, it's sort of like I would say I told you, I've been telling everyone all this all these years, but it's that's slight self-justification on my part, because this was actually a team of developers who were spending money, making a game, working with Gala, selling NFTs, being part of their ecosystem, and they really sort of give you a sense of what it's like to work with Gala Games. And I guess from the outside looking into Gala, these are the sort of things that we sort of thought, sort of sharp business practices, and we've sort of seen here and there. We've seen examples of sort of Gala Games, doing slightly weird stuff, and it transpiring that they didn't do it for the reasons they said. So they're sort of lying about stuff, and we've always sort of had I've always had the feeling that Gala Games doesn't really care very much about anything apart from the Gala token price, which has been incredibly successful at maintaining despite all the sort of bad news coming out about Gala. There's not been any good news coming out about Gala for since 2022. I mean, as far as I can see. But I think it also does go to show that this sort of stuff isn't a game. These are companies who are employing people, who are spending real money. They are signing contracts in the expectation that those contracts will be sort of honoured by the other side. And when that doesn't happen, then there's I don't know the Gamedia people at all, but there are people who put their heart and soul into running a company and employing people who have families and paying the mortgage, and it sort of seems like they don't say this, but sort of reading between the lines, it seems like they wish they never ever started working with Gala at all, because they're such a horrible company. And it's not about the blockchain. They nothing at all. Is about I don't know what Gamedia's view on blockchain is anymore. Maybe they don't want to do it. I mean, that would be not a great surprise, I suppose. But it's not about blockchain as a technology. It's just about Gala Games as a sort of operating entity. So I mean, I'll read a few things out. I mean, they do sort of say at the beginning they were initially hesitant and unfamiliar with NFTs and cryptocurrency, but we were drawn to Gala Games missions empowering gamers to supplement their income, and prioritise the well-being of gamers and gamers. And they were sort of pretty successful, and they said they got their money from Spider Tanks. They were getting revenue from selling NFTs, and they put that back into the game. They were sort of reinvesting it all. And then there's sort of the paragraph starts. However, we soon began to notice troubling signs in Gala Games' behaviour. And I think, as I say, I've not worked directly with Gala Games at all, but just looking at the outside, it just seems like, at one point you could just say they're incompetent, but then at a certain point, that level of incompetence actually becomes, trying to think of what word to use. It becomes a sort of a sort of bad behaviour or worse than that. See if I can sort of pull some stuff. This is what Gamedia is saying. I mean, it's, one interesting thing is basically saying that required Gala game features, marketing commitments, and revenue payments were repeatedly delayed. Punitive systems like honor were forcibly introduced into the games. Gala Games had no resources for marketing and community engagement on Spider Tanks, but they aggressively expanded into unrelated industries like music and film, spending millions on fruitless celebrity partnerships, jets, and real estate. And this is sort of something outside of Gala, but you sometimes see with sort of these crypto or even like any sort of sort of scam type operations. When these people get a lot of money, then they're influencers. They spend it on hanging out with celebrities, buying fast cars and fancy houses, and look at FTX to a degree. All the money they spent in the Bahamas, all this sort of stuff. It's just sort of, that's not, you don't see that. That's not how real companies work. And so Game Media sort of go through, and they say obviously over time we sort of vaguely worked out that Gala Games were not a company we wanted to work with. And at that point they sort of started saying we're not going to sort of do this sort of stuff anymore. And they signed contracts for 2 other games. And interestingly, it said Gamedia signed contracts for these 2 other games, but Gala Games never co-signed their contract. It says Gamedia say we had gone as far as purchasing a new office building, being prepared to accommodate new staff to work on these games. We'd redirected all our focus and resources away from the revenue sources we had prior to Gala Games. So they were all in on sort of Gala Games and Spider Tanks and these new games. And basically Gala Games just basically, just hung them out to dry. And even worse than that, it says, so with heavy hearts, we were forced to fully disengage from further investment in new content for Spider Tanks on the Gala Games platform. So basically, Game Media just said, we can't work with you guys anymore. You're just totally untrustworthy. We're not doing anything more. Since then, Gala Games has publicly defamed us in an attempt to shift blames for their shortcomings. They've resorted to legal action, sought to unjustly take our intellectual property. They have tried to portray us as opportunistic, greedy, and evil. So, and then sort of the sort of the most important line, I think, in the whole thing. And so, they tried to portray us as opportunistic, greedy, and evil. And then Game Media says a mere projection of their own behaviour. So basically, Game Media, and we put this in our headline, Game Media think Gala Games is opportunistic, greedy, and evil. And certainly from the outside, I don't think anyone would have disagreed that they were opportunistic and greedy. That's sort of clearly been seen from the outside in terms of their behaviour. Obviously, evil is a very loaded term, but for a company that worked with Gala Games for 3 years, that's what they said. And obviously, they then go on to say, we're not the only ones to fall victim to this actions. The internal Vox team was faced with terminations and accusations of dishonesty. The Miranda's team was fired and labelled as slow and non-cooperative, and numerous other projects massively lucrative for Gala Games in the past have failed without any accountability being taken by Gala Games. Meanwhile, all of Gala Games co-founders, many shareholders and many employees have been fired, bullied away or sued, all for the greater good, according to the Gala Games that remains. So basically, you have what Gamey is saying is a history of bad behaviour, and if something goes wrong, Gala Games just sues you and says it's your fault. There's no accountability, and they are basically just enriching themselves. We know the 2 co-founders are suing each other for what one of them is accusing the other one of nicking $130 million worth of tokens and selling them. Obviously, the co-founders have become immensely rich, because Gala Games has been a sort of successful cryptocurrency. But there's been absolutely nothing that's come out of Gala Games that you say has fulfilled their mission to make good blockchain games. I mean, there's a whole bunch of games that were announced in 2022. None of those have come out and people played them and they've been great. It's always sort of jam tomorrow sort of thing. And it's sort of like, I mean, for me, I would say this is sort of the nail in the coffin for Gala Games. I mean, I don't think that's probably the case because Gala Games is still the second biggest gaming crypto. Its market cap is over $1 billion. And it takes a long time for that sentiment to sort of drift out of the market. But, for anyone with any sort of sense of the market, it's clear, it should be clear that, Gala Games is not something you would touch. So the analogy I've been sort of using is a bit like, if you're smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day in the 1980s, by that stage, everyone knows that smoking is bad for you. It's not like the 1960s where they're saying doctors love Camel cigarettes or something. There's a point at which, the general market should be educated on these things, and if they're not, that's sort of their own fault. So I hope this is the end of Gala Games, frankly, and it's just sort of sad that I think, from what on the outside it seemed like a sort of funny sort of history of this sort of weird company doing bad things, but obviously when you talk to a company who's been an honest company who's been working with them and to see sort of the impact it's had on them, you just go, well, this is it's more than sad. So.
Well, you use a term that you hope that, but do you actually think that it could and might be? I mean, it seems like no one's really bothered. There's been some, affirmation on Twitter when Gamedia published this statement, but there hasn't really been a big outrage or anything. There was already, obviously, due to the hack and the weird things in light of that last week, which is now really sort of how much are they actually manipulating and lying about stuff. But, it might not be an immediate sort of impact on Gala, but it'll add up. But with this alone, and kind of other companies coming out witnessing of sort of similar treatment or behaviour in Gala, do you actually think that this could be the end of Gala? You say you hope so? I mean, people are still really interested in just going for the biggest crypto at the time and kind of hyped up about that. They don't really care much about sort of due diligence and.
No, I think in a sense you're right. Yeah, of course, the price of Gala didn't go to zero this week because Gamedia said what a horrible bunch of people they are. But I think it's sort of, as I say, if you sort of took any interest in this, you would know Gala. I've heard, not quite on this level, but I've heard sort of similar things from people who've worked with Gala, in the past. So, and I think, the thing about crypto is when you get as big as Gala is, it's sort of, it's on loads of exchanges. So there's market makers owning loads of it and trading it. And it's sort of, you do have these coins, maybe you call them sort of zombie coins, zombie cryptos. When you get to a certain scale, it's almost like the price can never go down to zero again, just because of the way that sort of crypto works as an ecosystem. But I think clearly no one's going to work with Gala. No proper company is going to work with Gala, ever again, because their reputation, internally is probably has been so bad, and now publicly is so bad. So I think from the point of view is, what can Gala say going forward about the great new game it's got going live? I mean, it has no internal capacity now. No third parties are going to work with it. The film and music stuff is clearly, it's not works at all. They've burnt everyone they've ever worked with. You just can't see any way in which they can sort of they can fool a whole bunch of new people to come in and buy Gala tokens, which is what you need the price to go up. So the price might stay the same for forever, sort of thing. But I think that's what I mean by sort of the nail in the coffin. You just can't see the Gala price going up, doubling. I mean, it's just that they could do that. There's some manipulative thing could happen, I suppose. But it's what you expect to see over time now, or what I expect to see is, we'll just assume the Gala market cap will just stay the same, and then as the blockchain games market continues to grow, then other cryptos will just get bigger and bigger, and as the market gets bigger, then Gala will just become this sort of irrelevant. So I think we're sort of, in terms of the Gala token, we're sort of slightly locked. The price is slightly locked in the past because it just got so big last time. It's still down like over 95% from its all-time high, sort of thing. But I think it's almost now something that we can just sort of not talk about anymore. I mean, I'm sure we will do, because I'm sure loads of more nasty stories will come out about it. I mean, I'm sort of joking that for someone, there's a really sort of mad investigative book you could write about. I'm sure, because there'd be lots of people wanting to spill the dirt on Gala, and I'm just just it will be one of those classic stories of sort of. At least on one level, people who don't know what they're doing, making loads of money, and then showing they don't know what they're doing by the way they're spending that money. I mean, it's clearly what we saw. So, but maybe in terms of us talking about them at this sort of level, maybe we can just sort of draw a line under that, and that's the nail in the coffin, is at least from our media coverage point of view.
Yeah, that's going to raise the question more generally, right? Sort of leaving Gala but transitioning kind of on the same subject. Is it a problem generally, do you think, in Web3 gaming, that ecosystems and those sort of bigger platforms have too much of power, centralized sort of power over game developers and studios who, I mean, they need an ecosystem and a network to deploy on and to launch, unless you're sort of a really quirky, small on-chain game that's doing everything yourself from scratch, sort of thing. I mean, it isn't, in truth, sort of the first time and the first ecosystem we hear of this sort of behaviour. It's just that it's been so systematic from Gala, I suppose. But
I mean, I think sort of slightly boiling down your question. I think the and it's been the it will always be there for crypto. It is the sort of what's the balance between speculation and sort of I don't know what you might call it, sort of building or sort of utility or something like that. And I think I've not been in the space sort of that long, since 2018, but that's always sort of been a question there. At what point does sort of a game having actual utility in players, at what point does that become sort of foundational and the speculative thing goes away? And I think you just have to accept that in the crypto space, where anyone can create any of these things and sort of manipulate them, whether that's through sort of meme coins or celebrities or whatever, that the price, the day-to-day price of something will always be driven by speculation, because people will basically, you create a global financial economy where people just want to get rich and they don't care about the long term or the utility of the game, or obviously games are a very small part of crypto, but that's why meme coins, everyone loves meme coins, because it's like, well, there's nothing, you don't have to worry about the utility, it's just pure speculation, everyone piles in. So I think as I would say, that to some degree, sadly, or to some degree not, that's the feature, not the bug. Speculation is always there, but I guess particularly in the game space, that we I think there's almost like it sounds pompous almost, like, but it's sort of there's a duty for us who sort of know about games to to focus on the fact that we think this is a interesting game, and the game bit goes first, and the crypto bit is sort of the blockchain bit is the in a sense sort of is the game is the horse, and the crypto bit is the cart. I mean, it does a lot of the carrying and build community using that sort of stuff. But if I cared about the crypto thing, I wouldn't be writing about blockchain games. I'd be writing about crypto and doing all that sort of stuff. So I think the gaming space is sort of maybe slightly different in the sense that I feel we and I do sort of there will always be a place for mad meme coins and all that sort of stuff, but that's not. I don't care about that. It's not something I'm interested in. I'm interested in games, and I think in 10 years' time, what will the biggest sort of market cap or the biggest economies in blockchain gaming be? Will they be blockchain game meme coins, or will they be economies based around games with millions of players? And I think they'll be based around games with millions of players. So there'll be speculation in that sort of market as well, of course. But I think at that stage, you'll have that sort of strong foundation that will allow speculation will be gated within that. I suppose. And we're in this sort of
Donald Trump drama will be a mere memory.
Well, no, there'll always be drama, but but I think just in this in between space where the biggest game has maybe 1 million players and maybe half of those are bots, and until you sort of get to the stage where you have blockchain games with millions of daily players, and then over time tens of millions of daily players. That's just taking longer than we sort of thought, and in the meantime we get all the froth and all this sort of and as I would say at the moment, what we've seen with Gala Games is the sort of maybe a good thing is that all these tokens have launched as they did in 2021, 2022 on the last sort of bull cycle. Gala Games was one of those back then, but all these games tokens have launched and all of them have basically failed. I mean, maybe some of them will in a couple of years' time come through and they will have had the determination to actually build something. But the speculative sort of element is just always there, because in a sense, you can always generate some millions just by having a Discord, making some tokens and getting some sort of KOLs to shill your coin. I mean, that's if there's $1 million just lying around, and lots of people are going to go through that sort of process. But over time, I guess when companies are making hundreds of millions of dollars by actually making a game and getting it to work, then that will become more sort of valuable, I suppose.
Good. Right. In funding news this week, Web3 kind of gaming startup Play AI announced a 4.3 million seed funding round. Play AI are building kind of an AI-based middleware for game developers for sort of to collect data and Yeah.
Not very clear, is it? No,
Depends what they're doing. AI-based agents.
I think you can file that as a company with AI in its title raise some money. I had a look at what it's not. They're not.
Web3 company.
I can't see anything public about exactly what they. Yeah, we'll wait on that one. Yeah.
Good. South Korean Web3 game developer Civil Labs also announced that they'd raised 4.5 million in seed funding, and co-led by Aptos and Neo. It's Intella X, so that's a bit more sort of substantial. we got a bit more information on that. They are building Supervillain Idol RPG and Project Arc, which I think to some extent parts of that is live, isn't it already?
There's a NFT fusion thing, but I think that's part of the other game, not Project Arc. I think it's.
I see. Okay.
I'm not quite sure actually, because they've got some NFTs live. I guess that's sort of more of an Aptos sort of thing. So Aptos is sort of blockchain out of Facebook without any games on it, sort of trying to get some games on it. And they got a deal with a South Korean company, Neo Wits, who run Intellex, which again was a sort
of Polygon, isn't it? Intellex.
Well, I don't think it is anymore. I think it's one of those ones where it's nothing really worked out for them. So maybe they signed an agreement with Aptos last year to sort of work together. So maybe they're a bit more sort of multi-chain. But yeah.
Good. Okay. On that note, we are going to finish up. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.